Dr. Phil, the real Dr. Phil, not this American reality TV show host guy. Who's that? How are you?
I'm doing well, mate. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been, but I'm very excited to explore what exactly is hybrid training. Because unfortunately, for those watching, if you're listening, you'll just have to, go and check us out on YouTube. Phil has been beaten up mercilessly by the anti-hybrid training crowd that are quite prevalent on the internet. He's sporting a black eye at the moment and somehow still looks very handsome. So, Phil, how did you get the black eye?
Well, I gave a different opinion of hybrid training and then that was it. The Wolves came.
Was it a knee from a rugby match?
No, it was actually the back of someone's head into my eye.
Are you concussed as well?
No, I don't think so. I didn't feel shaky. I felt fine. Just it hurt. You know when the skin's quite sensitive around the, especially between the eye and the eyebrow.
Yeah.
And I think it was just like a whack that wasn't too bad, but because it hit quite a sensitive area, it just ballooned up. So
yeah,
it's fine. I was probably in the wrong position.
Yeah, that's. I remember when I broke my elbow playing rugby. The first thing the ref said to me was, "You went down out of the tackle the wrong way." And the flurry of swear words that came out of my mouth next, I actually got told off for a day or two later. And I thought, I snapped my elbow. The first thing that you said to me was, came the wrong way out of the collision there, Fergus. You can surely forgive me for calling you some words that, in the moment, were, you know what, I stand by those words, Mr. Charman, if you're listening.
The ref was probably expecting it and wanting it. See how you'd react.
I reacted very badly, as the internet does to the concept of hybrid training these days. So let's break it down, Phil. It's become quite diluted, and I don't want in any way for this to be sort of gatekeeping. We are just both very passionate about the balancing of strength and endurance concurrently whilst seeking progress in both and understanding what that was originally intended for as a concept, coined in 2015. The confusion around it, I think, has created people that are in the anti-camp a little bit. But the benefit of the sort of confusion and the growth of it means that there's a whole load of new people trying new things, which is fantastic. But I do think it's important to highlight the original definition, the origins, the nuance between a few things that are often thrown at the concept. And I guess we can discuss what we think the future of it is a little bit. So for those that might not be aware, Phil is a senior lecturer in biomechanics and strength and conditioning at St. Mary's University. And your PhD is in...
It's in bioengineering, actually. It's in the knee, but since my PhD, I've gone down the sort of concurrent training, hybrid training route, which I'm enjoying very much.
So there's no one better qualified in the UK in a research setting, as far as I'm aware, to talk on this topic. So anything that I say, I can just pass off to Phil and go, please reinforce me, Phil, which is always a nice person to have in your corner. So I love training this way, for context. We at Omnia obviously love training this way, and the primary benefit that we see from it is enjoyment and the willing acceptedness of compromise, I guess, is the thing. We are not under any illusion that you're going to be Eliud Kipchoge and Dmitry Klokov at the same time, and that's okay, because not many people are going to be Eliud Kipchoge or Dmitry Klokov separately at any one time. There is a very, 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 very finite, small percentage of the world that can reach the absolute peak of their individual sport, but for the vast majority of us that train recreationally and want to experience different things, different places with different people, I believe hybrid training is a fantastic methodology to be able to achieve that. However, the term has evolved. Fitness racing has confused it a little bit, I believe, and I think social media has contributed quite significantly to that chaos. So before we unpack some of that, and this is purely objectively, I don't want this in any way to come across as I said, gatekeepy or in any way looking down at anyone or anything. I do think in a professional setting, anyone talking about hybrid training really should know the origins of what it is and what it was coined for and how it is developed. But that is a conversation for another time. So, Phil, original definition was Alex Viada in 2015 in the book The Hybrid Athlete. So there are receipts on the internet for anyone wondering, and it was the concurrent training of different athletic disciplines that do not inherently support one another and whose disparate components are not essential to success at any one sport, which in simple terms means that you are training in disciplines that don't directly make you better at either or and striving for progress in both of them at the same time, which means that it is not a lot of things that people often try and label it as. So we'll start with your interpretation of what that definition and Alex was trying to address that hadn't previously been addressed in research literature or as a concept, really, because it is different to traditional S&C, concurrent training, CrossFit, all these things. How do you interpret that definition and Alex's first book?
Yeah, I think it's a very distinct definition because it highlights the difference between that and concurrent training. You know, sports have been trying to develop both strength and endurance concurrently for years, many years before Alex Viada's book came out. But the key thing is that he highlighted that you are actively trying to improve in two separate disciplines that don't necessarily support each other. So you might be like yourself. Say you're a triathlete and you're a powerlifter. You are actively trying to improve your performance scores in both of those sports at the same time. Now, that's very different than someone that's trying to get stronger and get more cardiovascularly fit for sport, let's say like rugby, or, I mean, you could argue that there is some form of concurrent training in all sports. You know, you do some form of S&C strength work in running deliberately to try and improve factors like running economy to improve your running performance. Isn't necessarily you're doing, hybrid training. So all these different sports will require some element of strength and endurance. So there's some element of concurrent training. Whereas with hybrid training, Alex very highly pointed out that if you're actively going for performance measures in both of those at the same time, you know, not everything you do in one sport is going to actively transfer to the other sport. So if you're a hybrid athlete and you're actively trying to improve your running and you're doing some strength work, that strength work would be look very different compared to someone that's also trying to be either a competitive powerlifter or is actively trying to improve their powerlifting performance. So that's what I think is really different. And the key thing is, like, hybrid training is concurrent training, but not all concurrent training is hybrid training.
I think that's probably the key nuance that I half type out and then just decide it's better to delete and exit the post that I'm on the internet quite a lot of the time, because I think the belief is often that hybrid training is just concurrent training, CrossFit's just hybrid training, or rugby players are the original hybrids, or rowing athletes are the original hybrids, whatever that means. And I do think it's unfortunate that Alex hasn't got the visibility and ownership of that phrase that he deserves as the coiner of the phrase, and the frustration that a lot of people are feeling with the term online, I believe, is pulling potential individuals away from giving these things a go, which is the whole reason that I got into this in the first place, is because I was given the confidence to go, you know what, maybe I can actually pursue some strength goals alongside training for my first this or my first that, whatever it may be, after so many years of not having the confidence to do that. So the reason that I want to have this discussion and want to sort of, I guess, myth bust a few things is because my desire with Omnia and with my impact within this hybrid training sphere is to encourage as many people as possible to find the confidence to explore new things that can improve their quality of life and give them enjoyment. Performance metrics are individual, and I don't know any professional athletes that are throwing their toys out of the pram about the definition of hybrid training. It's only people that are not good enough in the individual sport that they believe they have invested a lot of time in, so therefore project those insecurities onto other things outwardly. So without getting too in the mud immediately, I think that's important.
Is that where you're finding most of the detractors of hybrid training? It is those that are a single sport athlete, but they are not at the elite level or not even at the sub-elite level, and probably some frustration there that's led to them to, like, who are these people that are both doing two at the same time and realising that actually their scores are quite close to mine, but at the same time they're doing all this other stuff in another sport?
I think so, generally speaking. And obviously I probably have more visibility on this than the average listener or average person would, because I'm online personally and online with Omnia, keeping a very close eye on the sphere. But I do think what bothers me and what has always bothered me is anyone tearing down somebody else that is actively pursuing progress in their own individual goals for their own individual benefit. And unless you are fiercely competitive at the pointy end of your competitive sphere, then there is no competition person to person. This stranger on the internet that's doing something to progress themselves shouldn't be at the sort of pointy end of your disappointment in your own performance recently, or whatever it might be. I mean, I've seen things recently with people saying that, you can't consider yourself an Ironman triathlete until you've gone sub 10. Just statements like that, where these are people that have probably gone 9:57 once, and therefore anyone else that's fallen beneath that category therefore isn't as good as they are. But realistically, they'd probably want to be going 8:30 or low 8s to knock on the door of being a pro, but they haven't got there yet. And I don't in any way want to sort of give individual examples, but I do think what hybrid training has done, and this is what it was designed for, is open people's world to being above average in a single sport is where a lot of people recreationally get to. But because the gap between above average to elite is so massive, you can actually become above average in quite a few things at once if you apply yourself with intent to them, which makes those that have committed a long period of time to being above average in a single sport that haven't been able to allocate the time, investment, whatever it may be, to close that gap to elite, it makes them feel a little bit threatened at the fact that, oh, hang on, this thing that I felt was sort of protected in my world is now under attack from people that do other things. And I think the disdain that strength athletes have had for cardio and the disdain that cardiovascular athletes have had for the gym for so long is something that I think is limiting. And I am very biased in this opinion, I do admit, but I believe there's massive merit to both and they both give you different lessons. And that's what drew me to this world in the first place. And there is a lot of noise online. I think another one that comes up is the word athlete itself. I think a lot of Americans, because the sporting facilities in America versus the UK, there's so much more of a cultivated track and field, football, what's your vertical, what's your 40-yard dash. There's these metrics that people have an understanding of. I think there's certain categories of athlete that people view in a very skill-based sporting side of things. And the reason I'm somewhat waffling is because there's so many examples I could give of things I've seen online that are probably ignorant to the reality of the original definition, which was quite niche, specific, and addressing a very specific problem. But downstream of the phrase becoming more and more diluted is more and more people having more and more fun with their training at a recreational age group level. Hybrid training has in no way, shape or form affected what pros are doing. And pros are not really piping up about what they believe the definition to mean or what they think it should mean. And I think that's a really important thing to highlight, because I firmly believe that the most important thing when it comes to training is enjoyment. And if you lose sight of that and let ego get in the way, then unless you're aspiring to be pro or you're winning age groups or you're qualifying for this or qualifying for that and you're sort of progressing upwardly, then I think a lot of people are losing sight of the fact that this is an individually driven discipline. Team sports are obviously different, but again, you can't place your entire worldview through the lens of an age group team sport. But the team sport mechanic, because it's less individual, I guess you've got that teamwork mechanic, you've got that community. There's other elements that go on there. So I don't like infighting. I don't like that powerlifters hate bodybuilders. I don't like that triathletes hate runners. I don't like that road runners hate trail runners. I'm very anti all of that. I firmly believe anyone that's committing to progress in their individual sport and they're enjoying doing so is absolutely killing it, which is why I think highlighting the original definition and then allowing people to interpret that and apply that in their own world is an important thing to do. So what we'll do is I'll throw out a few things that I've seen as quite common to be misunderstood with hybrid training, and I'll allow you, in all of your black eye intelligence and interesting background at the moment, because Phil's currently having a podcast studio built, so he's indoors in his new property. And if you break down what the differences are from your understanding, obviously as an academic in the space. So, number one, hybrid training is just concurrent training, which we've already covered, but if we just break it down in simple terms again.
Yeah, of course. So the difference between concurrent training and hybrid training is usually in concurrent training, the goal is to be better at a single sport, and you are developing certain qualities to be better at that sport. Now, strength and endurance could be part of those qualities. Hybrid training, you are deliberately trying to improve in separate sports, and quite often those sports don't necessarily support one another. I think a lot of people, they see someone that is both quite strong and both quite fit in comparison to those that are just cardiovascularly fit, say like runners versus those that are really quite strong, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that is what hybrid training is. It is getting stronger and getting and fitter. And I can understand where that's come from, because these athletes are, you know, they look absolutely great. They look very different to what athletes used to look like 20 years ago, where everyone had a very specific body shape that was tailored to their sport. I think the idea of you can be, let's say, above average in multiple sports, I think is still quite new. And if people are still in their like own sort of sporting world or their own paradigm, it's quite a shock to the system to see that, oh, actually people are able to get close to my scores and be pretty good in other sports at the same time. I think that's still a very new concept. And I'd argue that I think if we get an hybrid athletes that, you know, let's say you had an hybrid athlete that focused on just the squat and the 5K run over 10 years, they would, you know, they'll be way above average, because they have, even though the two don't necessarily fully support each other, because they've been consistent in this style of training for a long time, we're gonna see people really hitting strong barriers. I think, really, you know, I think the level of hybrid athlete has nowhere near reached its peak, if I'm truly honest. In one of my lectures for Omnia, for our silver and gold athletes, I talked this idea about a continuum, where you might have someone that's more of a generalist versus someone that's a hybrid athlete. And a hybrid athlete is obviously very focused on two specific goals, whereas a generalist may be someone that's developing strength and endurance for goals, like, say, you know, they might do a high rocks, then they're going to do a triathlon, then they're going to do this. You know, they like doing different things. So the goals are less focused. So the style of training is a little bit different, but there's nothing to say that you can't move from like a hybrid athlete to down to a generalist for a bit, back to being very focused hybrid athlete. And I guess the hybrid athlete is that's where it starts to overlap with, you know, the definition of concurrent training in a way. Well, it's all concurrent training, but more the traditional thought of it. But I guess because a lot of people probably see themselves on that continuum without being aware of that continuum, they just assume it's all hybrid training. But argue it isn't. All is good training, but
yep.
It isn't necessarily hybrid training, but it could be.
On that, I guess the other accusation that I see levelled sometimes I miss the S there, is it's just fitness, bro. Oh, you lift weights and you run. It's just fitness, isn't it? Or you lift sometimes and you go for a swim. That's just fitness, isn't it, bro? Mm-hmm. And I think everything is just fitness. If we break it, we're just speaking words, Phil. How meta do we want to get with this? We are just atoms making noises. I'm running out of knowledge to be able to really pull this example to my death with me. But nonetheless, it's just fitness, bro. Is it, Phil?
Well, yeah, of course. All training for all sports is just fitness, if you break it down that way.
Yeah.
So
where do you see the nuance?
Or the nuance. I just think people are annoyed with style of training that's probably been around for a while, but now it's got popular and it has a real culture behind it. Then all of a sudden people think, because it's starting to be named and people are utilising it more, people are getting annoyed. Oh, it's been like that all the time. It's like, well, yeah, but it's just different. It's more focused now, and the culture isn't yet a sport, but that's what gives it its ability for people to be a bit more flexible with what they want out of it. It's a culture at the moment. I think it could be a sport, but at the moment it's a culture. And because of that, that's where the differences in definitions come from. And I think people are just getting irritated by people using it in a way to make it sound like it's loads different to what's gone before. It's not. It's just a more structured methodology in a particular direction. Exactly.
And I think, do you see, this is just personal interest really, do you see similar patterns in academia where things that have become quite consistently understood or were considered to be rock solid that are then challenged, or there's certain ideas that people throw out there that can then create a little bit of, I guess the crux of the question is, has the growth of social media magnified a problem, that exists in a research setting already, or is this just a social media problem, whereas research, by virtue of being research, is more open-minded to these that continuum that you've referenced?
We've got a few PhD students and master students that are doing projects in this area. So it's starting to, really get niched down with the hybrid stuff. But I do think it's more of a social media thing because people can almost monetize it. People are trying to use it in their own way to present themselves in a certain way so that they can use it for marketing.
I think the social media fitness industry side of things is, if you really distill it down from an economical point of view, it's always been very simple. It's find a problem, magnify the problem beyond all belief, and then sell a solution dramatically to the problem. And I think potentially our biggest downfall is that I've always done my best to communicate that hybrid training in and of itself is not anything new or that special. It is a set of structured methodology considerations to help you align what you are doing for more specific outcomes, and removing a lot of the fluff that may have been a part of or inherited from previous methodologies you might have spent time interacting with. And I think I'm very pleased that I've experienced that firsthand myself, whereby the reality of just being very direct with my training, and that's why I've always been a huge proponent of skin in the game and really clear specificity with hybrid training, is kind of what underpins that far end of the continuum that you referenced. Because I think, the monetization side of things is probably where people get quite frustrated with the term, because it is thrown around so loosely for SEO purposes or whatever it might be, to try and fit in with a very big and growing global industry at the end of the day. But the downstream of that is that there's more and more people doing more and more things. The research is going to become more and more prominent, which is great, but there will always be grifters in amongst it. So I think that's never going to change. And I think for anyone listening that's wondering what we are and who we look after at Omnia, we help people that have goals in different disciplines structure their training in a way that allows them to execute those goals as effectively as possible whilst removing the fluff. That's pretty much it. We don't have the be-all and end-all one and only solution for this style of training, and everybody else is a fucking idiot, like some adverts that I've seen in the past from V-Shred and the like often like to present.
V-Shred, I remember him.
He was
back.
He was very good. He was very good at the grifter's playbook, so to speak. But no, that's it. I think we are a huge proponent of working backwards from specificity to optimize the suboptimal. That's always been key to our messaging, and I know that you believe in that as well, Phil. So another statement that is leveled at hybrid training, and I interpret this as very similar to, it's just concurrent training, bro, or it's just fitness, bro, is this is nothing new. It's just good old-fashioned strength and conditioning. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Well, it seems like it's just concurrent training. Well, yeah, it's a form of concurrent training. It's just fitness. Yeah, all training's just fitness. It's just strength and conditioning. Well, yeah, you'd use strength and conditioning principles to develop this methodology, but that doesn't reduce its legitimacy,
It's just lifting weights, bro. There's no such thing as powerlifting or bodybuilding. It's just lifting weights, bro. It's like, how far do we pull this back?
Well, any strength and conditioning coach will take the sport or the goal, do some form of needs analysis on it to try and understand what is required to do well at that sport / the athlete needs, and then formulate the appropriate training program to achieve that. You would do that with one sport, you'd do it with 2 sports, you'd do it with 3 sports. So, yeah, it is. But again, it doesn't make hybrid training any less of a training methodology.
Agreed. Something else that I've typed out 50% of and then deleted and exited the post. Oh God, I'm just
Have you got
massive...
like a graveyard of things?
No, I don't. It's just I think that the thing that I enjoy the most is it gets me thinking on how to try and help. I at my core, I know how I entered this space after years of not believing that I could, and I don't think the origin of the term is given enough credit for the impact that it has created, and that's something that it's not my term. But I have no reason to be precious about it, but I do just think it's important that the nuance is sometimes given, because I'm very passionate about the pursuit of a hybrid performance. So that's why we keep coming back to this conversation. On every podcast I sit on now, I am asked, hybrid training, what is it? Tell us. I'm like, oh God, here we go again. Here we go again. But and here we go again. Literally, right now, this is happening again, and it's entirely by my own choice. So never change, Fergus. It seems. So yeah, I think those are the statements that keep popping up and up, and ultimately none of it matters because, as I said, more and more people are trying more and more things, but more and more people can try more and more things and yield better results over a long period of time, or potentially better manage their injury risk, or better manage the speed at which they get to those results through the structured methodology of hybrid training. So from your point of view, Phil, how has the term positively impacted your perception of how people are training? I guess that comes from a lived experience, a research, and a social media point of view, which I know you don't spend much time on anymore, but given you're on the research side of things, you're getting more and more masters and PhD students exploring it. What do you think the positive impact of the term has been?
Yeah, it's not that I try and avoid social media completely, but I'm definitely very particular with who I follow, so I probably miss quite a lot of the stuff that you've seen. I don't think I could take that, to be honest. The positive impacts that I've seen personally. Okay, let's see personally, because I've set challenges where you try and improve, I don't know, certain strength lifts at the same time you're trying to improve a running performance, say marathon. I did a marathon and I think it was 3 strength lifts. I tried to improve it in 11 weeks. That was like my initial dipping my toe into it. Saw improvements across the board, but it's only 11 weeks, so you probably would expect that. But it definitely highlighted the enjoyment of doing both. And it also highlighted that actually, you can really start to see people pushing in both here and actually start to achieve it. So I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people are arguing about what hybrid training is because we haven't fully seen yet the potential of what people could achieve with it. And we're seeing, challenges like you're doing, more and more people are doing the mile run and the, the squat 250 pound
deadlift. A lot more people are trying 500 pound deadlift and sub 500 mile. 500
pound deadlift, that's it.
Yep.
That's 250 pounds, sorry. So more and more people are, it was the 4-minute mile, wasn't it, initially, of hybrid training. Now more and more people doing it, setting more crazy challenges. And I think in the next few years, we're really going to see this being pushed. And I think that's really exciting. And I think people are starting to really want to be part of that. Like I said, hybrid training at the moment is more of a culture. People can set their own goals. So, for example, yours might be triathlon and powerlifting. Mine might be weightlifting and just cycling. We can choose that. We can choose the bits that we like and just try and pursue getting as good at them as much as we can. And people are enjoying that because we've come from years of cultures where we've just been on our sport and that's all we did. But now people are like, well, I like being outside. I don't want to be in the gym all the time. All of a sudden, they're starting to see different ways of training that satisfy them a bit more. I think we are also getting to a point where people are playing single sports like football, rugby, and then get into their early 30s, and it's like, well, I started thinking of retiring from those sports, but I still have that competitive edge. I want to stay fit and all that. What else can I do? I don't want to just do one sport. I want to do multiple. Oh, here we go. All of a sudden, there's this culture which they fit in quite well, and they can mold it to what they want to do. So I think that's why it's so popular, and that's what drove me into it. I played rugby. I did weightlifting. I had 4 knee surgeries, 2 of them ACL reconstructions, and I just didn't want to be in the gym all the time, but I liked being in the gym. So then all of a sudden I was finding new avenues to train and new methodology, and it just led me towards this.
Wonderful. I think, very important point and anecdote to flag is that, I think changes in people's lives and what becomes less important or more important to them is where I believe this methodology and culture really suits people. And it came at a really valuable time for me personally. I know a lot of the athletes that we work with, it's come at a really valuable time to them personally, which is why I like having this conversation, to just try and reinforce the fact that you can do whatever the fuck you want to do, and you can do it as well or as badly as you want. But if you're having fun doing it, that's the only thing that matters. So to those that don't believe that and get all angry on the internet and sometimes make me angry in response, that is my stance on that one. Final question, Phil. And we'll talk about this in depth on a full separate podcast, is if you could have 4 components to determine the best all-round quote-unquote athlete or hybrid athlete, depending on how we're categorizing that, what would they be and why?
Wow. My immediate answer, if I've got 4, would be to try and split them 2 on each. So you could always look at absolute strength and then something which is slightly more powerful. So you could have, I don't know, a back squat and a deadlift or deadlift as your ultimate strength, and then some form of weightlifting or a derivative as your kind of like power. And then on the endurance side, you'd have a shorter distance and a very long distance. So you're highlighting 2 key areas there. That's probably what I would do.
I think that's a really important point, actually, because you're highlighting energy system utilization and testing there rather than a blending of them, which is a very important nuance for people to consider, because I think this is where we kind of land on the fitness racing point within the continuum, where not testing maximal strength output and not testing maximal speed or endurance output, but rather sitting in the sort of strength endurance sub-threshold region in the middle, is very different to training for maximal output at opposing ends of an energy system spectrum, which is ultimately what hybrid training was originally designed to address. And I think that's part of where the confusion around the term has developed, but at the same time, more and more people are training in a different way. So I think that energy system consideration is key, because I think top-end strength training isn't quite as in or popular as it once was, because I think more and more people are integrating strength training into circuit training. Or, I mean, we've got CrossFit to thank for a lot of this. We've got Hyrox to thank for a lot of this. More and more people are moving in more and more ways. But I think the top end maximal, can you move the weight or can't you, has somewhat been lost in translation a little bit. So it wasn't my final question, I've lied. On that, because I've mentioned the C word, what would you view the difference between CrossFit and hybrid training be? What would you view the difference between CrossFit and hybrid training to be, based on that testing of performance that you've described? Because CrossFit obviously claims to test the fittest athlete in the world, but do they?
I mean, in terms of the link, or the most that has a grey area, I think CrossFit is that one. Because if you try and go back to the original hybrid definition, like you're trying to improve 2 sports as a whole, like CrossFit is its own sport, which is made up of a number of different events. But you train at multiple different sports to get better at CrossFit. So one of the events could be, I don't know, a 2,000 meter row. Well, you could choose rowing as your hybrid sport, couldn't you, for the endurance side of things? So training for an individual sport, for an individual result, does apply to CrossFit. Sometimes CrossFit is its own sport, so you have to train in many different ways to try and get better at CrossFit. CrossFit really is the grey area, I think. And I could argue that, I don't know if this is going to be contentious, but I think CrossFit really went down the route of how can we make more movements? How can we introduce more complexity and then test everyone under fatigue in those complex movements? And that's just really led to a lot of people not being able to do them, or thinking, you know what, the barrier to entry is lower here. I'm going to go in this direction. It opened up, the opportunity for Hyrox and others, including other things that happened with CrossFit. But that was one of the things, I think. And I think as they've done that, they've tried to add so many different things that you've got to get better at. It will level out the potential that you're able to get to. So they had that 5K run at the CrossFit Games. I don't think the recent one, but one before.
Yeah, the 5,000 yards. Yeah,
it was, the distance wasn't quite right, but someone was reaching like, I don't know, 18 minutes with that.
I think
they readjusted it a wee bit at 18.
someone juiced,
Yeah.
I think was his name. I think he did low 18s, and
Yeah.
what I really that put me off CrossFit, because it was a intentional attempt to make a sport that is designed to not be elite at many different components, make it seem as if the athletes can be better than they are within that context. The context of CrossFit is that nobody expects people to be running 5K times that are going to be impressive in an athletics club setting, but they can do it whilst putting 350 pounds over their head for reps. That's the key detail. But it was an intentional 5,000 yards and calling it a 5K. It was very intentional. It wasn't 5 kilometers. It was 5K, single word, 5,000 yards, sneaky, very sneaky, and intentional.
Okay.
And I think that's what put me off. I mean, I might be wrong there, just in case CrossFit HQ are listening and want to send a lawsuit. That's obviously all entirely my own opinion. But yeah,
But that was a shame.
That was a shame. That put me off. That showed to me that they were threatened by things like High Rocks, which has done a much better job at getting more and more people into the sport quickly and embrace them in a way that doesn't require the higher barrier to entry, both with cost. I mean, High Rocks are very expensive to take part in now, but box memberships aren't as expensive, I don't think. But also, yeah, I mean, there's so many movements in CrossFit that take years and years and years to master, which can put people off. And I think it would be foolish not to flag that.
Well, I think if you narrowed down everything, and for say a hybrid athlete did focus only on 5K and maybe just getting stronger, they could reach like 16 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're adding so many things that they've got to train for, you limit the ceiling that they can get to, because they've got to spend so much time training all these different components. Whereas the idea is that, some of them are going to transfer, but I think if you focus on 2 key things, you're going to get very good, and that's the future for hybrid training. And I think we're going to really see some impressive athletes.
Yep, me too. And hopefully I'm too old and broken by that point to even consider competing against them. And that's the pathway that I'm probably on, based on.
You'll be seen as like some original OG that set the pathway, and then
I'll be like
the younger athletes come out and set it on fire. Like
I've seen skaters these days calling Tony Hawk a shit skateboarder, and that's unfortunately, objectively,
that hurts me. That does.
That hurts me a lot. That really hits. Skate 4's out though, Phil. I did say I would get a games console again when Skate 4 came out, and it is now out. Yeah. So Erin's going to be very disappointed. I'm also disappointed because I'll probably lose many hours to that silly game. But
I just bought the remastered Tony Hawk Skater 1 and 2.
Class that you're going even more old school. Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, there's like Japanese 13-year-olds doing whatever it is, 12.
And I think they learnt them in like 13 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, 12. So they're doing 1260s back to back, and Tony Hawk was 900. So it's funny, but also incredible how much progress we can make by having these conversations and encouraging people to push the boat out further and further and further and further. And I think that should be celebrated rather than fought inwardly. I think anyone that is actively working, looking after a family, developing themselves, committing to a fitness goal with progress should celebrate one another and shouldn't get all pissy about other people on the internet, because there's not a huge amount of people doing that, so we should all be friends. And at the end of the day, unless you're a pro, unless you're winning, no one cares.
It's just training.
It's just training, bro.
It's just strength and conditioning.
What is it? Rowers are the original hybrids. MMA fighters are the original hybrids. It's anyway. All of this, it's all very silly. All this conversation is very silly, but I feel it's important to have it because I would like to keep my brain sharp on the responses. But also, again, just as we flagged, there is nuance, and that nuance allows people to pursue different things. But when the nuance isn't there, more and more people are trying more and more things, which is a fantastic outcome to have. So thank you very much, Phil. We will talk again very soon.